Elika will start with an overview of gender apartheid. Thank you.
Thank you, Azadeh. I am going to set up the overall framework, the background of gender apartheid, and where it is right now in the international legal community. The purpose really of today's panel is to set up the legal framework for gender apartheid, but then to paint a living and vivid picture based on personal experience that helps to bring alive the lived experience of gender apartheid. It's one thing to read these things in sometimes articles, to study them and just read written content, and it can turn into statistics. And we want to make sure that when people hear the phrase gender apartheid, they remember a story that stuck with them that they heard. So I will take the liberty of just very quickly explaining the lay of the land as it is now. I want to start with a bit of history. Apartheid comes from the Afrikaans word for apart. The term was born out of apartheid South Africa and its system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination, which sought to establish and maintain dominance by white South Africans over black South Africans. That system eventually came to an end, in part because of decades of pressure and isolation from international actors through shaming and severing diplomatic and economic relations. Gender apartheid forms the bedrock of the governments in Afghanistan and Iran. The distinctiveness of the assault on women by those regimes stands apart from other troubled regimes of the world. Rather than govern with respect for human rights under the rule of law, these regimes act with an iron fist, and they have made women the target of that fist. Instead of waging a war of open annihilation on women, these two regimes in Iran and Afghanistan have mastered the art of using governance to inflict gender apartheid. The apartheid standards that we have today in international law, however, they were developed in the 20th century. They were developed specifically for racial apartheid. Today, the components of systematic segregation and subjugation that existed in racial apartheid are there in a different variation in Afghanistan and Iran. So, for example, under the Taliban, women in Afghanistan are banned from education, from employment in NGOs, from employment in the government, and from traveling long distance without a male guardian, all while having to abide by a severe dress code. Month by month, it seems that the news coming out of Afghanistan only gets worse and worse as the restrictions on women, even down to the salons they can operate, become stricter and stricter. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, women are banned from many fields of study, sporting events, from obtaining a passport, and their testimony is worth half of a man's under the law. They are forced to wear a hijab, and they are part of a broader legal system that bans them from being judges, bans them from having meaningful and significant roles in the very laws and the creation of policy and governance. These bans and the broader legal systems they belong to seek to establish women's subjugation by men, and this is coming directly from the state. It is a state-controlled and state-implemented system, and that's the essence of gender apartheid. That's what makes gender apartheid different from gender discrimination. It's this institutionalized, systematic, government-created, government-sponsored, government-funded, broad, down to the infrastructure of governance. It's embedded across every aspect. We're not talking discrimination anymore. This is systematic. It's gender apartheid. Currently, the international legal community is trying to modernize, unfortunately, we have to keep up with oppressive regimes, with every form and variety that they come with, every 100 years or so, however they mutate. And currently, this international legal community is working now to convince other nations and international organizations to codify gender apartheid as its own distinct crime against humanity. And that's why it's so important for us to hear these stories, diverse perspectives, and to make sure that we raise awareness both about what's happening in terms of the legal changes, but also what really drives this are the personal experiences. So let me take a minute and introduce our amazing panel today. Shilan Zade here to my left. She is a Kurdish Canadian originally from Mahabad. She's a faculty member in Vancouver and she moved to Canada over 20 years ago. Not only is she a guide and a mentor for the youth of Canada, she's also an active civic global citizen. She's an active humanitarian. She's the founder of Education for Humanity. She's a member and on the board of directors of Tumar Sadahi Foundation. She's a consultant and a member at the International UNESCO body, and she has always been passionate about empowering women and girls throughout her entire life. Shilan's current focus is reaching out since the Women Life Freedom Revolution and since the death of Mahsa Amini to help build unity, and this includes both across the United States and in Canada as well. So not only do we have collaboration today by Iranian American nonprofits, we have cross-cultural, cross-border collaboration from the US to Canada. And we all know how amazing and beautiful that is for the Iranian diaspora. So thank you, Shilan, for being here. Next to Shilan is Natascha Dammann. Natascha was born and raised in Germany to a German dad and a Persian mom. She went through the German school system, growing up in Germany, and she decided as a teenager that she wanted to do a school exchange in Iran. So she left Germany on her 18th birthday, and she went to Iran, where she fell in love with the things that we all love about Iran and what makes us fight for freedom and democracy today. She fell in love with the people. She fell in love with the culture, with the beauty of the country. She decided to go to university in Iran to become a journalist. She studied political science, and she moved to the United States in 2005. So Natascha's role here as a diverse voice, which we've emphasized this theme of how important it is when we engage as the diaspora to bring in diverse voices. Natascha represents that unique perspective of a dual national and how gender apartheid actually affects that. And not only that, Natascha also reflects the large contingent of Iranians in the diaspora who they weren't really political activists before. Maybe they didn't follow politics, or they just didn't naturally feel an inclination to get involved. And she reflects the people who, because of the sacrifice of Jinnah, have been called and have actually found that it was always there. It was always there within them. And Mahsa Amini and that loss and everything it reflects has brought people like Natascha to the table. And so that's why we are so grateful to have you here. And last but not least is Dr.Banafshe Madaninejad. Banafshe has a rich history of nonprofit and grassroots activism and involvement. So Banafshe, I don't know if it's because she actually studied physics in another life, and she studied complexity theory, and some code that she wrote is at the space station, I guess. But anyway, I think possibly that science, or that understanding of complexity, understanding of structures, perhaps influences her ability to understand how grassroots activism needs to work in terms of linkages, connections. What does it mean when we say, let's use our network? What does that look like in action? And a big part of why we are so grateful to have Banafshe here today is because what she says can help teach others. And that's what really a big part of this is too, is learning from one another. So thank you again. I am going to turn it now to Shilan to hear her story. And I would like to start off, Shilan, everyone here in this room loves hearing about your Kurdish stories, your Kurdish identity. So could you paint the picture for us of what it was like experiencing as a child gender apartheid, and could you start maybe by telling us, as a child, when was the first time you realized that your gender was the thing that was separating you or was making you different and was affecting your treatment?
Thank you, Azadeh, and thank you, Elika Jan, for having me here, and thanks for all of your audience. I've been out of Iran for over 20 years. I left my motherland, not by choice. I was exiled. And I became an advocate and for women and empowering women from an early age when I realized that something is not right in a society for where I grow up. I'll share with my experience. I was always reminded that I'm a girl. The voice is good? Yes? Higher? Oh, okay. All right, I lean forward. I was always reminded that I was a girl by certain limits of activities I could have outdoors, like such as biking, swimming. You probably have heard of that. Even going out alone. I was always supposed to be chaperoned and going out with someone. I was given instructions what I am supposed to be doing or not doing. So, and I was an active and a curious girl, and I questioned everything to why I have to behave in certain ways while I saw the boys, cousins, and the neighborhoods that they were all free and they were able to do whatever they liked. Family was quite protective of us, my sister and I, and it didn't make sense. The story I'm about to tell you, it didn't mean to bring me this far in life. I wasn't prepared to be here. I don't come from a high-end family. I don't come from a wealthy family. But I'm a little girl who have been looking around and didn't like, and I was outspoken about how women were treated in the society. And I guess that was the main reason I was sent out, just to protect me and make sure that I remain alive and I can still do what I please. The challenge that as a Kurdish speaker, okay, all right. The challenge as a Kurdish girl I have faced extended when I left the city. I went to Tabriz for my studies. And I realized that there isn't, not just that as a girl I have limitations, as a Kurdish person I also have certain limitations. The questions were, okay, you're Kurdish, also are you Sunni by faith, and also are you a separatist, which I didn't understand at that time. Do you have a political view, which I didn't know what it was, and many more questions. So this whole event continued on to even to Canada. When I moved here, there was additional questions and mindsets, and I'd say that I should easily, well, I'll come back to that, but the whole upbringing of my generations and before that followed me all the way to Canada, so I couldn't connect with other people even in Canada, with Iranians, with Kurdish community. So it just made me more and more isolated and disconnecting from where I come from. Until Gina's time last year. Of course, my activities were always there, empowering women were always there. I connected with different countries, and I knew that there was a necessity globally to empower women, because this gender apartheid, the women issue is a global, is not just mainly a part of the region, especially in Kurdish region. So it's been successful to a degree, but then now my focus is mainly on what's been happening in Iran, because I knew that how helpless our women is, especially Kurdish women from a closed culture, with not much of a ability to speak up or voice themselves. We know that what happened in the past year or so, or even before that, we had different movements, and it was always silenced in a different way. But this time we would like to push forward, move forward. We want to keep the light of the woman life freedom going. And I guess this is the reason why we're here today. You lovely people here that I didn't know before, and now we connected and we have a purpose, we have a cause all together to get ahead, to be the voice of voiceless. And that gives me extra hope. Am I nervous to be here today? Absolutely. Did I make notes and I don't know which flashcard to take first? Totally. I go between, and then even before we start this recording, I asked if I could be the last. Yes, of course, because I want to be perfect and I want to be correct, and I still bring all this perfectionism over me, all these responsibilities that I have to carry, because it is within me. Because I was told that I had to be perfect. I needed to be a good girl, properly dressed. And if I am any lesser, I would bring shame to the family. And I really hope that today I don't bring anything but pride to the Iranian women, Afghani women, women who are hopeful and watching this recording, knowing that someone is there, someone from that place, been there, done that, felt the pain of what they're feeling now. And I hope that it works out. It's a long journey, it's a work in progress. It's not an overnight solution, but I am one of many here to make that movement go. And thank you for that.
Thank you. Shilan, you may be in this room, in this crowd for now, the only Kurdish Iranian, the only Kurdish person. And because of that, and because I know many people in this crowd very well, I know how much unity means to all of us. And I know how we all talk about Kurdish people when Kurdish people are not in the room. Mm-hmm. And you would see how proud we are to have Kurdish people as part of Iran. And so I want, because Shilan would never do it, and I've never met a Kurdish. Since the day that Mahsa Amini was killed, and I bet you none of you either, I have not once on social media, anywhere or in any platform, see anyone Kurdish say, that the Zanzandi Azadi, that was our thing. Not once has anyone ever seen that from this community. That's come on. So I would like to give Shilan an opportunity to remind us of the history, a little bit of the Kurdish role. And so please, Shilan, tell us about Jinjian Azadi and how that is a Kurdish motto. I think it's important for us to all take that piece from you guys and take it forward for all of us.
Thank you very much, actually, for bringing this up, because it's never been mentioned by non-Kurds. Maybe in Kurdish channels, it's been mentioned, but as an Iranian, it hasn't been ever testified that it has started from a Kurdish region. In fact, the Jinjian Azadi movement started from my hometown, Mahabad, over 76 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, when the Kurdish revolution happened by Qazi Muhammad, and then his wife and a couple of the member of the family started a small community for women to express themselves. And then they called it that community center, particularly for women. But it faded away. It stopped there. It started there, but it faded away, and then eventually forgotten about it. But then eventually, when the other political parties became active in different areas of the Kurdistan, they picked it again just to improve the connection between men and women, and then because there was always a collaboration with fights and survivals and running to mountains and supporting one another, it was taken by other politicians and processes. Until over 30 years ago, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I haven't studied it much, but I think it was taken by one of the political parties, and ever since it's been their slogan to basically attract and draw attention more of the women's participating in the political parties. So we'll leave it at that, but women's place in Kurdish culture has always been there. I compared myself to my great-grandma, who was taking charge. She was in charge of actually 5 villages in the area, and she was called Empress. She was powerful, and she had they called riots with guns and everything. So they would follow her. And then it goes my grandma, who had to be quite respectful, and obviously respectful but obedient of the family, and never speak out about their what they think. And then my mom comes, that she grows up and gets married during the revolution. She's a teenager with 2 children, and after the war of Iraq, my mom was overly protective. That's how I grew up. And then I come up and I have all these questions never been answered. Like, you shouldn't be asking these questions. Shh, quiet, no. And all through this generation, it just didn't make sense to me until it clicked that at some point, women, Kurdish women, had powers, and they were capable of operating completely. They had the first judge. We had women who opened schools in the area. But then something happened. Some political manipulations happened, and then it scared men that women, the frontier of a community, will be vulnerable to taken advantages of, or hurting, or whatnot. And then eventually, to protect these women, they kept them indoors. And that became a culture eventually. Became a culture to my age, and it was such a confusion that no one could figure it out, because it was a matter of survival only. So this is where I come from. And then eventually, after Jina's death, this was reminded: woman, life, freedom, Jin Jian Azadi. And then suddenly, many of us just came back up and said, no, wait a minute, I had a place in the history. I was capable. I can do it. I should do it again. So and I think I'm one of them. Yeah. Yes, and the other thing that I really appreciate that both of you have mentioned, Masa Jina Amini. The reason Jina's name is not signed in her birth certificate, because Kurdish names were not allowed to be registered in birth certificate. So by force, she was, her parents were forced to choose a non-Kurdish name, which was Mahsa. But she was always called Jina at home. Mom and Dad always refer her as Jina, and I'm grateful that you bring that up. Thank you very much. I know we've done millions of hashtags under Masa's name, and I'm grateful for that. But now that the revolution kind of sort of died down and we can hear each other out, let's make sure that we correct the name. It's Jina Amini. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilan. For myself, speaking for myself, I haven't liked saying Masa Jina Amini so far, because I would personally rather say Jina Amini. It was out of deference, because that hashtag took the story viral, and we will always be grateful to that hashtag for breaking the story internationally. But as Shilan just said, we're more evolved now, we're more understanding, we're talking more. Not a single person in this room knew each other 15 months ago. Okay, there's one person here who was a childhood family friend, but we accidentally happened to find each other. But thank you. So for myself, I will I commit today to use Jina Amini going forward, with all due gratitude to the hashtag. A lot of people don't know this, that I think it's worth saying, what happens if you let discrimination and oppression continue? Many people don't know that I am 1/4 Kurdish, and 2 generations prior, my Kurdish grandfather was exiled or forced to assimilate, to leave Kurdistan, and he was forced to take an Iranian last name, a Persian, non-Kurdish last name. They changed the whole family name. And the sad thing is that if you, in a blink of an eye, 2 generations later, when I asked my mom, what was your dad's real last name? For 5 years now, she said, it's on the tip of my tongue. She can't remember it. So you can lose, if I knew that name, I could maybe find some Kurdish distant relatives or something. But so we must, when she asks us to, if we can, use Gina Amini, let's do that, because I can at least one person say, I know what it happens if you lose the name. So thank you so much, Shilan. Natascha.
You started with identity, and I think that's where I pick up. So first of all, thank you, Azadeh. Thank you everybody for coming and inviting me to be here. So my story obviously is a little different. I grew up in the 70s and 80s in Germany, German dad, Persian mom, and for me, gender and being a girl didn't mean anything. I was the same as any other kid in the bus, the school, everywhere. And specifically through my mother, because she would emphasize, it didn't make sense to me until I went to Iran much later. She would constantly tell me, Natascha, go. Go climb up that tree. You can do it. You can do anything a boy can do. And it almost was funny to me because I knew I can do it. And we would do it every day. But of course, today I understand that she wanted to tell me, you can do it. And she wanted to tell me, there's no difference between you and the boy. And she wanted to break the cycle. And I'm very grateful for that. My mother has passed, and we went through a lot of memories these days, and specifically the last year has brought up all these memories again, because I learned something very important. I was under the impression, my surrounding people and my friends and co-workers always thought that I was a strong personality and a strong woman, which I'm humble and grateful for. And I always was thinking it was because I was privileged to be born in Germany, and I went through the German school system. And I think that's one of the best things that happened, of course, to me. However, I'm understanding today, with all the strong women that I specifically have met and what I have been seeing in Iran in the last year, it was my mother's blood that made me who I am today. It's the Iranian blood in me, the female Iranian blood, that made me a strong woman, and I'm very proud of it. And I say it out loud today because my story begins with, I'm not Iranian. I'm not dual citizen. My experience is very different to a dual citizen, and I actually explain that very quickly in a minute. So because my father was a German, I am by citizenship German. I have tried for many, many years to obtain an Iranian passport when I was living in Iran, but I wasn't able to do so. So basically, not only that by legality I wasn't Iranian, more importantly, and this is what actually is part of this story, I didn't belong. I never belonged. I still today don't belong, right? So, and you hear that from many dual citizens. You hear that from the generation that was born here. They had maybe Iranian people, parents. But then you have the ones like me who always were the foreign kid. I was Bacha Almani. I was the German kid. And it was great. It was great. Why? Because I had privilege and everything. Why? Because I was a guest in Iran. Now you tell me, how are treating Iranians their guests? They love foreigners. They love the guest. You come to our house, we put anything that we have, we put for our guests. So now you can imagine I'm an 18-year-old and I'm going to Iran, and I'm a foreign kid who barely speaks Farsi. Actually, first day, I only would say salam, and that's it. The entire country fell in love with me, right? So, and it gets to you, because you're like, wow, people treat me with respect. You're 18 years old, you're nothing. You haven't achieved anything in life, and suddenly people show you respect, and you're like, wow. You say, I'm somebody, right? I never forget the first day. And all this, of course, made sense to me later. And today, of course, this is not supposed to be a funny story. It was funny at that time. It was very great, right? But this is a sad story. I entered the airport for the very first time with my mother. I was 15 years old. I didn't know any Farsi. We were supposed to go for a month. And suddenly my mom, who I don't know Farsi, is fighting with the person there, and she gets angry, and you see your mom getting angry. And she says something, and then she like grabs my arm, and I'm like, whoa, what happened to my kind mom? She's suddenly like, Slyness, wow. And then they get to me, and they are nice and they are kind. And that was just because she had an Iranian passport. She was coming back to her home country after 25 years, and the first thing they told her is, why do you look this way? Why do we have this lip this? Why do we have this? And she was a very, very pretty woman. Pull your scarf up, this, blah, blah, blah. And then they didn't say anything to me. They were kind to me. And she's like, you know that this is my daughter. She came out of my belly. And you're treating her with respect. And you're basically not treating me with respect. I didn't understand that. I, of course, thought it was an absolute overreaction. And today I'm sad. I'm sad that she had to experience that. I'm sad that she didn't have the chance to go back to her homeland and were treated for the wonderful and respectful woman that she was. But that's where my journey started. So I went to Iran and I went to TIS. Should I just keep going, or should I just?
Yeah.
So then I went to TIS as a school exchange 1 year, Tehran International School. We were foreigners. At that time, 1992, we were all foreigners. There were no Iranians in that school. So we had a school uniform, just like, and this is the sad part, like many of you, we had one. We even had a marne. Nobody cared that we have that. We would go colorful. We would go with jeans. We would go with t-shirts. We would go with prints. At that time, remember in Iran, nobody would wear Michael Jackson t-shirts. We would. We would even wear them when we were outside in the school, and nobody cared. Everybody would just say, hey, you know, kids get in there, right? And again, we wouldn't understand. We would just enjoy this special treatment. Sure, everybody is, we're humans, right? It gets to you. So when we left, when our shift left, the Tadbiri, I don't know if you guys have heard it, there's a school that's the Tadbiri. It's basically for Iranians who have lived outside. Now they are coming back to Iran, they don't speak Farsi, they go to Tadbiri school. It's basically how they then integrate them into the Iranian school system. Has nothing. Ours was in English, of course, was different, international diploma. When they would come, the entire mood changed. People were yelling. People started. I didn't really speak Farsi at the time. You would feel they are tense. They would literally yell at students. I'm from Germany. Nobody yells at a student. We don't yell at teachers. Teachers don't yell at us. They don't get close to us. We don't get close to them. Nothing but respect. People would be yelling. You would see that suddenly, like, things would, like, you know, when they come to the school, they start, like, they would come with an open mantle, and then suddenly they would close up. We were, and that's sad, I'm almost embarrassed to say that, we would make fun of them because we called them the gray mice. It's shameful that I have to admit that we did that, because we didn't know that they were under oppression, because we didn't experience it, right? So that's sad. And then, of course, again, I don't even need to go into these stories because some of you went to school in Iran and you know how terrifying it actually was, specifically for girls. I know the stories. I have many friends. I still, even today, have friends who tell me. Of course, I lived in Iran, so I know what they went through. And I went to university there as well. So nothing but terror and fear. You know, girls in Iran went to school with fear. Again, it didn't mean anything to me at that time. But when I then decided to stay and go to university in Iran, yes, I did it for fully selfish reasons, because I wanted to be very competitive in the journalistic world, obviously, and you know, be in an oppressed society. So I thought, like, this experience is something very special that I bring to the table. But in all honesty, when I stayed longer, and that's why I changed from politics to sociology for my master's, is I have to do something for women. I figured, not because I felt that I was privileged, but then I met my friends, and I had a group of friends. Those women are nothing compared to me. I didn't need to fight for anything. Everybody always was saying, "Oh, Natascha, you know, great, you're so strong." No, I didn't need to fight for anything. Kimia didn't need to fight for anything. We went to school where we got nothing but respect. I wanted to go to the movie theaters. I would say, "Mom, I'm going. Okay, be back before it's dark." I had 30-year-olds friends. They couldn't even come to my house. We couldn't go to a foreign country because we had to get permission from their fathers to go out of the country. 30 years old. I left country when I was 18. So it wasn't me who was strong. However, I learned that I can basically provide a space and that I can provide resources. I had my own apartment. I lived alone in Iran in the 90s. I told my family, because again, my mother passed, I brought her back to Iran. I told them, if you want me to stay, I stay in my house. And they accepted that. So, and the government had, you know, no problem with doing that. Now I can live alone. And Iranian girls who were older than me, they couldn't even go to their friend's house at night, right? So I quickly learned that actually we can use my space, and at that time my platform, because I was working with journalists, to do things. And we did. You know, they're actually, I didn't even mention, but they're documentaries about our group. We did feministic theater. And I want to emphasize this today because we talk about it. This is not a woman issue, right? We don't talk about feminism. We don't talk about, oh, you know, this is what happened to do, and now no. We talk about there is legalized oppression, which we need to talk about today, because actually the revolution hasn't died out. We're just now in a phase of getting reorganized and actually getting into times where we can talk about really the important issues, and gender apartheid is one of them. Why? Because, well, at some point we want to take them to court. That's how I see it, right? So to really talk about it in legal terms, and that's why we are very grateful to the ones who know the legal terms, it's definitely time to do that.
Natascha, I have a follow-up question for you. Over the past year of the Women Life Freedom movement, we've seen things that are really egregious, like the Islamic regime being appointed to a UN, Council for Women. We've seen that the Iranian regime seems to enjoy a normalized peer status amongst nations. And I would love, because you can see this with a really unique kind of lens, can you explain in your opinion how this phrase that I don't know if you coined the phrase, but I've heard you use it before, how the politics of hospitality, how the way that in Iran foreigners are sheltered from certain things, how that actually is playing out in terms of government advocacy, international advocacy, and kind of it's built a protective wall around the regime to make it harder, like to delegitimize them. And I wonder if you can talk about that culture of hospitality and what you saw there and how that might be related.
Yeah, and that's an issue, you hear many foreigners, they love to live in Iran. Why wouldn't they? Right? I mean, they're privileged, they are treated, very well. They can do anything in their houses because at least at my time, and I know, I really don't know the name, but as a fact, I know it was there because there was a law that they were not able to enter my house because I'm a foreigner, right? They could not just like they would do at others.
Who's they?
The IRGC, the government, right? They cannot come to my house. So when I would pick up the FF, like the thing where the door is, I always said, hello? So they immediately know I'm foreigner. The fear, of course, now is that we have to be careful. If you look at the history, there's always been the history of hospitality, the policy of policy, the policy of hospitality, which basically is always like, we show this great face to the foreigners. They are kind. I mean, they have done I have been in meetings you can't even imagine. I mean, you are like, wow, these are the greatest people on earth. But of course, we know they are not. So that's, of course, I think also our fear as activists now, and I've seen others from other organizations, that when we talk to politicians even here or on the Hill, and of course you see it now in the UN, don't get, I don't even now really know the English word, just
Manipulation?
don't get manipulated, don't see through them, right? And I do think they do, foreigners and foreign countries, I think they do see through it, but it's all about image, and that's with the foreigners. They treat us really well because they want us to go back and tell everybody how wonderful it is in Iran. They're not going and saying that I can do things. In the 90s, I rode a bike in Tehran. Nobody arrested me. I want to see if any of you would have dared to ride a bike in Tehran in the 90s. Nobody did, right? And they let go. They let go because they want to make sure, and I did that, by the way, unfortunately. Again, there are lots of things that today I'm embarrassed about because maybe I didn't think about all aspects, right? And I would tell everybody, oh my God, it's great. Iran is great. Yes, the people are great. The country is beautiful. But the system is terrible. It's a terrorist regime. And the stories that I have heard over the years, and the ladies, the women, I always call them the girls, the girls, my friends, what they have gone through is far from what we as foreigners can even often imagine. So the only good in the bad right now I see is that finally, with anything that has happened in the last year, now everybody knows. Now everybody knows, finally.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was just very moving. So we are going to hear now from Dr. Banafshe. We don't want to leave on a negative note or leave anyone, lingering with the bad experiences or memories that we may have had in Iran or we heard our friends or families have. So I'm going to ask Banafshe, of course, to share a similar, just maybe like you, if you could share, like Shilan did something that was maybe an early childhood experience about gender apartheid. But after that, I want to follow up with you because the incredible thing that is in your brain that I want everyone to hear is the advocacy piece of it. But first, please tell us about that experience in Iran, what your personal experience of gender apartheid was.
Yeah. Thank you, Elika, for putting this panel together. Thanks, Azadeh, and to you. So I just want to say that those experiences made me who I am today. I woke up kind of emotional today, so maybe because I knew this was going to happen. But
There's some tissues.
Yeah, take your time. There's no rush. There's no rush. And this is very valuable for everyone to see how much trauma the Islamic regime inflicts, that sometimes years later you're sitting in the United States on a panel and the pain that we have is so deep in there. Look how difficult it is. We should all just look how difficult it is. Look at what that trauma is. But take your time.
yeah, so the very first memory I have of gender apartheid in Iran is I was 11 years old, and I was in 6th grade, first year of middle school, and it was very early on in 6th grade. One day this lady came into the class and she was so excited, and she was one of the Khwahar Zainabs, so they were known as the sort of, they played the, how should I say this?
Aunt Lydia.
Say Aunt Lydia, thank you. The Aunt Lydias. Aunt Lydias. Although I have refused to watch that show because I just can't. So she comes into the classroom, she opens the door, and she has this box of little bitty books. They're very thin, and she informs us that today is a very important day. Our government, after months of poring over books and whatever, and many old men, she doesn't say this, but many old men, clerics, working on this, have come up with our new constitution. So she hands these booklets to us, and they are giving us some time in 6th grade, whatever class that was, and she asks for this, she demands it, that we should have time to read this. So I start reading it, and everybody else starts reading it in the classroom. And we're reading it, and I remember the feeling I had in my body reading this. So I'm reading. I get to the point where things start sounding really terrible for women. And I stopped. I remember putting it in my bag and coming home. I got home around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, lunch, late lunch. We go through our day. It's nighttime. It's time to sleep. I can't sleep. I go to my bed. I can't sleep. I get up. And I remember it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I look at the clock. I go and I start reading this some more. And I'm sitting in for Iranians in the audience, you know that Iranian houses have this room where only the guests come and sit, mehmon khune. So I go into our mehmon khune, where nobody's there, it's dark. I turn on the light, I sit over there, I start reading this thing, and I am sobbing. I'm sobbing. I'm 11 years old. I don't fully understand what this is all about, but I am sobbing. So I go, my dad's an engineer, I find those old computer papers, I take a pen, and my 11-year-old childish brain decides, I'm going to rewrite this
Constitution.
choice words, insert choice words. I'm going to rewrite this thing. And as I'm trying to rewrite it, I am so frustrated. I am sobbing even harder because I don't have the equipment to do it. That was the day I decided I was going to study philosophy and politics. Right there. Right that moment. And every single thing that I've done in my life was decided that night.
The backstory, how I met Banafshe yesterday. We had a 5-minute chat, actually, before the congressional meeting. And she said, I have a meeting back-to-back today, and I want you to join me if you don't have any plans. And I'm like, no, my schedule is clear. So I walked with this woman. She had a small luggage and then a big bag with a group of us. And then I walked behind her, and this woman is full of passion and full of fire. We went up and down this building. The 11-year-old woman you see here crying and shares her story, she made it happen. Last night, I couldn't be any prouder that I was part of this remarkable group. This woman, she knocked on doors after doors of Congress to just share the stories and mention what is happening, the chaos that we have faced and it's going through in Iran. And thank you so much, Banafshe. Well done. Well done.
Banafshe, I would like to ask you to go to the physics and advocacy fusion that you do. And before I set you up for that, let me just to touch on her grassroots, her background. She is one of she's the founder of Global Collective, which is a nonprofit that brings to life the stories of people. It's a cross MENA, from different backgrounds.
From Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, South Asian.
Okay, perfect,
yeah.
perfect,
Yeah.
so broad. And so she already has a previous experience with the human dimension of advocacy. Because if you get it, like I said, at least in this live audience room here, no one here knew each other 15 months ago. So how do you build trust with people that you are meeting sometimes on social media? And to note, the group that Banafshe and Natascha represent, Progressives for Iranian Democracy, is interesting because they have members from across the U.S. How does that even happen? Where did they meet each other? Certainly not in person. And so she understands the human side of how do you work with people to form a group. Progressives for Iranian Democracy, one of their amazing, if it's okay to say Republican, I won't single anyone out who's here, but there's someone here who is a dedicated Republican and who we are happy to have here and who is a member and supporter, kind of like the house mom for PFID, and that speaks to unity. That speaks to how the people who are on the board of PFID conduct themselves emotionally with others, even if they're not from the same politics. And so Banafshe's experience really, it comes from that world. Part of it also, as she said, in politics and philosophy, she's an associate professor down in Texas, and so the component where you can teach, you understand the emotions, and how to do the advocacy, that's what you really need in a policy-driven role. So Banafshe, to make it a positive, keep us looking towards the future and to be forward-looking, can you tell us a little bit about what PFID has done in terms of taking the lead on educational advocacy for getting the United States for the first time ever to appoint a special envoy for gender apartheid. There are many special envoys, which gives the U.S. administration a chance to target an issue and empower an office to give more resources and dedication to an issue. Well, we don't have one for gender apartheid, and PFID is working to change that. Can you tell us that story?
Absolutely. Well, I'm just going to say, but every member of PFID is sort of extremely involved in this project, and in fact, our advocacy this time in DC is centered on this. That's one of the things we're doing. The other piece of advocacy for us is trying to stop the Gaza war turning into a conflagration that could bring Iran into it and having a war in Iran. This whole story began just going back. The beginning of the Iran advocacy for me started with the Green Movement, and in Austin building a really solid team. And I didn't know any of those people in the beginning either, and this was 2009. We kind of came together and we stayed friends, and in fact some of my best friends are the people that I met during that time. And as soon as Gina's murder happened, we sort of came together and started working together again. We started from the city. At the city level, we came up with a proclamation, and we moved to the state level. We are told that we had the first ever Iranian American advocacy day at the state level. We worked on 70 advocates. We're going to call them advocates, but they call themselves lobbyists. So they were advocates, and we had a whole day. They read a resolution, a joint resolution at the House floor, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then we started on DC, but specifically talking about the gender apartheid special envoy. The idea, I honestly had no idea about this. Elika, you have some expertise in this. I really didn't have any. And so what happened was we during those early days, we were just talking to anybody and everybody, literally. Like if we had the chance to talk to someone who had worked for the government, someone who was a lobbyist, they didn't have to be Iranian American, they could be anybody. So during one of our meetings, this person who actually has some clout in DC told us, we brought up this gender apartheid issue, and he said, you know what I think you should do is push for a special envoy. And we're like, and you know, I know what a special envoy is. I was like, oh my God, bring, like, and I was like, okay, and then we started contacting the whole movement, like, there are people behind this movement, and by then we had made some connections. We had made connections with Azadeh Afsahi, who was one of the main signatories. And then Elika put us in touch with Gisunian. And so we started speaking with them, and they were like really excited, because the whole idea behind this gender apartheid thing is to normalize and codify this, even this the language in itself. The fact that this is beyond misogyny. What women in Iran and Afghanistan are experiencing is, in my opinion, several levels beyond misogyny, because it is ingrained and codified into this at the state level and at the legal level. It's literally subordination baked into the state. So that's where the whole thing started for us. We didn't know how to do it in the beginning. So we started thinking about, okay, how do we do this? And then we met with this one congressman who has been a lifesaver for us. He is my personal congressman, Congressman Lloyd Doggett. And as we were talking to him, he's like, okay, I'll tell you what to do. What you do is you get a letter. And when you do this letter, you get signatures under this letter from different sort of Iranian American organizations. And I was like, okay, what are the organizations? And we're in this big meeting, and I think Elika might have been in that meeting too. She's been with us every step of the way. She's been amazing. And he's like, okay, should we do human rights organizations? He's like, sure. Should we do feminist organizations? Oh, yeah. So basically, here is the first, and Elika wrote this letter for us, by the way. She's, as I said, she's been amazing. So, so we had the letter, Elika gave us the letter, and then we started collecting logos and signatures. So how did we do that? Now we knew, we have a friend organization called United UIC, which is United Iranian Council. Yes. We love them. They're out of Canada. And I've been working with them since, I don't know, December. It's been a while. They're just amazing people. I met them on Twitter. Like literally, we all met each other that way, right? And I don't know, Afshinjan, you might know, but Too Much Saleh letter. Yes. So they basically, their team was in charge of getting signatures during that period where Too Much was, we were talking about possibly him, losing his life, etc. So in 4 days, I don't know how many signatures and how many different organizations they got on that, but I was like, I got my eye on y'all. You know how to do this. And we were kind of working together anyway, so I get on the phone, I'm like, listen, yeah, we need some signatures. And they're like, we're on it. So they reach out to PS 752 team. And so this is how the work gets done. The work is, these people know these people. So now I'm on a Telegram group with several different organizations who are helping us get names. This Sunday, I'm presenting at the National Women's Studies Association, just as an academic thing. I've been talking to their administration to get a bunch of signatures from women's studies or feminist and women's organizations. So it's just these different ways of reaching out, and it's all to get signatures on this darn thing. And we took it to Doggett. He saw these signatures. You know what he said? I will sponsor this. And that was yesterday. So we literally have one Congress member who is going to sponsor this now. And this was what he told us. He said, go get some signatures. Then you get Congress members to sponsor this. If you get Congress members, because the final decision for a special envoy comes from the president. Before it gets to the president's desk, the other thing that we're doing is we're getting signatures from other special envoys. So the day before yesterday, I found out a friend of mine has connections with a bunch of special envoys. I'm like, let's do this. One other connection. Oh yes, ambassadors. So we want signatories, right? We have an ambassador friend. He has told us that he's going to put us in touch with other ambassadors. So just getting a bunch of names there so that when it gets to the president's desk, he's like, oh. And it's an international thing that we're doing, right? The only thing we haven't been able to get in contact with or make a connection with is the UN. So anybody out there, please get in touch with us if you can help us with that.
Thank you. Thank you for just making such a government advocacy. Typically, people who work in that field can't tell lively stories that bring it to life in that way. I know that I say this a lot, but I'm going to say it again. Just please always, as you talk to people, take a moment to realize the person you're talking to is not you. Were brought together through probably online or social media. There's someone here in this room who came to this event and we just found out moved to this city a week ago from cross country. And in today's, again, welcome to the new Iranian American diaspora. Hello. It's right here in front of you. It's a new diaspora that you can walk into an event and they say, oh my gosh, you're new? Come on in and join us. Mm-hmm. That's how we're going to do it from now on. That is the new organized voice of the Iranian American community. And I want to close by thanking you all so much. I can't say it enough what this does And for those of you who came here in person, thank you. For everyone out there who listened, we will all work together and keep working together in the name of Jina Amini. Thank you all so much.
Women like freedom.
Women like freedom.